Today we're going to be looking at exercises designed to help you not only get to the proper formation of each sound in American English, but to be able to hold the posture and center of gravity while doing so. The exercises today are directly based on all of the information from the last lesson where we saw how the posture applies to every sound. It is very much recommended that you bring up two windows or tabs if you're not on a phone. One window is the previous lesson, the other is this lesson, so that you can easily reference any additional information you need while doing these exercises. Towards the end of this lesson, we will also be talking about one or two extra bonus techniques that can help you really start to hold the posture as you transition from sound to sound. Remember that this is just phase 2. We do not want to get too far ahead of ourselves and jump into full-on words with multiple syllables and sentences and all this stuff. But I guarantee you, if you go slow and pay close attention, this lesson will be difficult for many of you. Most people underestimate the kind of work that we need to do here in order to perfect your accent. Exercise 0. So the very first thing that you need to do is make sure that you can do that center of gravity schwa-like sound perfectly or almost perfectly before you move forward to the rest of the exercises. Branching out from schwa. Exercise 1 has 3 steps for each sound. First is the sound itself with a slight pause after for you to repeat, and this is done 3 times. Then there is a transition starting from moving into the sound that you're producing, and then putting a dot on it. For example, E. That dot on it helps make sure that you're actually in that right end sound, because sometimes it can seem like you are, but you might not quite be there. Then you're going to go backwards. The third step for every sound is a jumping test, where you're going to hear and then you are supposed to repeat that 5 times. It will only show you once to help save time in this video, so you should pause it and then try to do that 5 times. Now this exercise helps you extend out from the center of gravity into each new sound, helps you make sure that you are getting into and out of each sound correctly without losing the posture or center of gravity, helps you find and correct mistakes, and builds finer muscle control and hearing skills. And you want to take your time and make sure that you're forming it correctly. So if you have to sit there for a second, my E is here, I feel my hinge, I feel, okay, my voice is low, I feel that, E, right? Maybe adjust things into place a bit, E, until you think you have as perfect of an E as possible. Because your native language posture settings are going to want to come back in. Remember, the goal isn't just to produce the right sound, it's also to produce the right quality, meaning you have the right posture, center of gravity, resonance, and voice placement. To help you do this, every sound in exercise 1 has a checklist so that you don't forget anything. There's also a special guide that will help teach you how to use phase 2A and phase 2B, part of which we're going to see in this lesson and part of which we're going to see in another lesson, and how to identify problem sounds and start using sounds that you already have in order to build things up. There's a special document for that in the description as well. One important thing you have to know before trying to practice these sounds is that the center of gravity, we can call that 100% when it's being used as a sound itself. But in the other sounds, we're still maintaining our posture pieces. We still have the difference between the middle sides and the middle body, but that will sort of shallow out a little bit. It will get sort of lazy, just like we can do a lazy version of every other sound. And what is the lazy version of the center of gravity? It is a true schwa, instead of I've talked about that in other lessons before. So when you're doing an E, for example, You should let that center of gravity become lazy, but still maintain that little 20% of it as a true schwa underneath. Now there's a little trick here because many learners don't go far enough, or they don't quite have the muscle yet to hold things in place while doing another sound. So a little trick that you can do is to try to hold the full center of gravity while you're doing that other sound. Now if I do that, it's probably going to sound a little weird. E sort of sounds like maybe it's between the two, but it's mostly kind of an E sound. If you feel like you're starting to really lose all of the center of gravity, or you're just not quite getting the right quality, one thing you can try is to push down more towards a full center of gravity while doing that sound in order to help balance it out, because you're probably not doing enough of the center of gravity even for the true schwa. There's even a half step to help you here. So instead of trying to go straight into E, for example, you can say E. So what I'm doing there is I'm starting in that full center of gravity as a sound, 100%. Then I'm, instead of trying to do the E and shift this to the 20% true schwa at the same time, I'm doing a half step, getting into that true schwa first, and then holding that while I go to do the E. Now, one more bonus point that's going to help a lot of you out there, it's helping many of my students. We know that that hinge is on the fourth tooth. If we go to the sixth tooth, this is not a new hinge. You're not going to slide anything back or change anything. Okay, so if we're looking at the mouth this way, and my teeth are on the sides of my tongue here. If I were to go, okay, fourth tooth is the hinge. Okay, that's lined up there. If I go fifth tooth, sixth tooth, that in the middle body, that's where you should feel approximately that center of gravity pressure. That's where the is on the back of the middle of the tongue. This helps give you a more 3D awareness of your mouth. And that leads me to one more point. Now I know you're ready to jump into the sounds, but this is all very critical, important information. You want to emphasize relaxedness. The maps that we saw in the previous lesson for all the sounds, remember, those are based on how it feels in my mouth, and they emphasize the posture pieces and the center of gravity. Part of the reason for this is because students don't usually go far enough into the right settings, but by trying to overdo it, you can accidentally add in a bunch of extra tension, either to one or more of the posture settings or to the formation of the sounds. All sounds in American English have a certain level of relaxedness, and we hear this through the overall quality of speech. It's one reason why American English sounds lazy, even if we're speaking clearly. If you do any of the following points, it will cause problems with this overall relaxed quality and or make you sound a little off in one or more ways. Do not overdo the center of gravity by pushing too much in the middle. Again, learners don't usually go far enough, but it is possible to overdo it. Do not push too hard on the hinge. The contact with the fourth tooth should be light and flexible, able to slide around a bit on that tooth. Do not lift the middle sides too steeply or hold too much tension in them. There are some sounds like the W, the W sound, that can get a little bit of extra tension in it, but you still don't want to overdo that. Do not hold your native center of gravity. So overall, American English pronunciation is more about letting go of tension and using just the minimum amount required to fully produce the sounds while holding things in place. When we're talking about the lips, the F, the V, the P, B, M, or any of the other sounds that might move the lips around, you have to make sure when you're done with that sound, unless there's another sound that uses the lips after it, you completely release back into the normal resting position for the lips. Another quick important note here, for the stop sounds, especially the voiceless ones, P, T, and K, remember that there is a strong version, a weak version, and a stopped or held version. I have other lessons talking about those details. For the practice that you're going to do in phase 2A and a little bit in phase 2B, when you're first just starting to get control over these sounds, always use the strong version, no matter where it is. After you start to master that and you feel like you have good control and breath and everything, then you can start using the weak versions and the stopped versions in the places that they're supposed to be used normally. B, B, B. 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 Mm, 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 t, 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 t. A reminder here again for the T, D, or N. Make sure if the next sound does not use the front of the tongue, you fully release it all the way back down to its resting position. D, D, D. D, D, N, 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 S, 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 Z. 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 Sh. 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 Y. 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 Ch. 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 J. 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 G. J. Th. 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 T. 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 D. 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 Z. D. N. 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 k, 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 Reminder again for the K. When you let go of that K sound, you have to fully release the back of that tongue to its normal resting position, unless the next sound uses the back as well. G, G, G. G, G, E, 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 Make sure that you fully release that front of the tongue all the way down to its relaxed resting position. A quick note before we look at the I sound. For any of these so-called short vowels, like the short I, like an it, or the short E, as in bed, the biggest mistake that my students make is when I say, make an E sound. They say E. When I say, make an I sound, that long I, they do I, I. That's not the sound, okay? I've talked about vowel length in other places, but even if we want to say there's a difference there, for practice and for making sure that you can hear the right sound and the right quality and all the pieces underneath, never do that, okay? When you're practicing E, E, if you're doing I, the short I, you should be able to hold it and make sure that you're not doing sort of a diphthong where you're starting and ending in a slightly different place. That's another common mistake. E, 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 ah, 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 ooh, 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 woo, 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 ooh, ooh, As a reminder here, remember to fully release, unless of course the next sound also uses the back of the tongue, then you go into that sound. O, 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 A, 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 I, 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 ow, 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 oi, 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 Exercise 2 is all about simple two-sound sequences. Now there's 2A and 2B. 2A is sort of an extension of part of what we did in exercise 1, but it's going to build even further. The most basic example of this is to go in and out of and a particular target sound, especially if it's a sound you have trouble with, and do a long breath transition. For example, Now there's a bit more of an advanced version of that, which you can actually just make however you want. We're going to do a couple examples here. Example with all front vowels. An example using some consonants. You can also do this by directly going into the sounds of the words themselves. So for example, if we have the word see, you can do see. In fact, let's look at exercise 2B. Now for the start of phase 2B itself, there are tons of ways that you can do this, but I do have a recommended path. Start with the t, k, and p, as well as the voiced versions and the nasal versions. First making sure that you can just release them into like we've been doing, but once you have that, start trying to release them into different combinations with other vowels, like t, t, te. Note whatever problem combinations you have and spend a little more time on those, but remember that as you're doing those other combinations, you're focusing mostly on keeping the posture, keeping the center of gravity, keeping it light and relaxed. After you've built up several combinations, like say you can do all the basic vowels with T, D, and N, other consonants can be added in any order, it doesn't really matter. And if you have some consonants that you can already do really well with the right quality, those are immediately available for you to start using in combinations and word building. Again, see the linked document in the description for how to use phase 2A with phase 2B. Now as another example of this that is a little bit different, maybe a little bit more advanced. Let's say we have see that. Identify the parts of the tongue that use the sound. Okay, and if you're not sure, many of my learners are actually confused about where they feel the sound. You can always go back to the previous lesson that talks about all the details for the sounds and it tells you where they're placed. Identify those parts. So the S is on the front of the tongue under the bump. Make sure you're not in front of the teeth. The E, also on front of the tongue. The TH, also the front of the tongue. Right, it's going to stretch forward. A, also the front of the tongue, very low. T, also front of the tongue, comes up on the bump. Okay, so this particular group of 2 words, 5 sounds, all use the front of the tongue. Now with the A, We know that a can slightly raise or push forward with the back, and there's a little variation there. And we know there's also a little wiggle room with these pieces, but for the most part, as you go through this entire thing, if you can get into a nice, good sound where your tongue is low, your throat is open, your voice is low, you have your hinge, all that stuff. As you go through these sounds, you should generally keep the middle, the back, and of course the throat in place. So if at any time, let's say you try to do an S and then you feel the back of your tongue come up with it, you're not doing that right. And then it's probably going to stay there as you go through the rest. You can't do that. So you got to pay attention to those other pieces as you're forming the sound. I know it's a lot to juggle, right? But let's say we're going to do the S. Okay, so we say C. Again, there's variation on the E. Keep it simple, just say it's on the front. You can kind of do it here, but whatever. C. So my middle, my back stays in place, my hinge stays in place, my resonance stays in the back, my voice doesn't get tight. C. Okay, if you feel yourself shifting like that or you hear yourself getting tight, keep it open. When we do that, th, a, the. We go up to the T, at. Okay, so I'm still very open, very clear, very relaxed. If you hear extra tension, reset, try it again. If we put it all together, see that. Now, of course, let's look at another example. It's a little more complex. So here we have front of tongue. We're releasing straight into an or it could even be a true schwa reduction, right? So that's just middle. This starts with a W sound. Remember, don't be confused by the spelling. So it's W plus Okay, W's on the back of the tongue. We go up into the and then into the N, so then the front. So that's w, n. Now the biggest mistake is that you don't fully release the W because your brain is like, oh, once I release the W, I can just go back to my regular setting. Now your back of your tongue is probably too high. Maybe it releases forward because you want to get back into your pushed forward native posture. You can't do that. You got to let this fully release, okay, as you go through the rest of the word. One. By the time you're halfway up into the end, this should be all the way down, relaxed back in where it started. When we do I, of course, we're going to open up. The I is kind of like front middle, somewhere in here. Go see the previous lesson for that. It ends in I or around I, so that's going to be from here up into here. I, okay. I'm going to break the hinge, get back onto the hinge. Saw, we're right back into an S again. And then ah is on the back of the tongue. Okay, so as I go from I to the S, the back of the tongue isn't going to be used very much. You got to keep it low, keep it in place. It can sort of activate for the start of I, but once you release that start and get into the I, it should already be back down and relaxed. Stays there for the S. Then when you go into the ah, the front of the tongue needs to fully release because now we're not using the front of the tongue anymore. Okay, if you try to release and you keep it up around here, you're going to have problems. Okay, and we're on the back. Remember, ah can sort of raise the back a little. It can lower the back a little. There's a range there. As long as you sound open, clear, you don't sound like you're in the throat, that's fine. But you are going to place the ah on the back, which means the front is relaxed. The middle is just our normal center of gravity. Saw. Now, one more important point for all of this. Okay, first of all, this is a little advanced for where you are now at the start of phase 2B. Again, use that document and you'll sort of see how you can overlap things, but this is still pretty simple, right? All these words are one syllable. A lot of it is with the front. There's a little bit with the back. You can kind of start moving around. If you can't do a lot of the basic two sound sequence combinations, this is going to be too much. Now, this is a two sound sequence combination in itself. Can you do the TH? Can you do the Okay. This is just a diphthong. Can you do that well? Okay. This is a two sound sequence, right? So we're actually starting to use some of these two sound sequences in words. This is a three sound sequence, n, a little more advanced, but not too bad. So keep it simple at first. Make sure that you're holding everything in place, that you're fully releasing everything as you go. Now, one of the most important things here, aside from fully releasing, do not hold extra tension on the sides. I may have said that earlier in this lesson, but it bears repeating. Some of the sounds like the W can get a little bit of extra tension. Check out the checklist document for those details. I tried to include all those details for the sounds that do that. If you hold extra tension on the sides of your tongue, even if it's just on the sides, it's gonna tense the rest of your tongue. Okay, and your quality is not gonna come out right. You're gonna sound stiff even if all the pieces are in place. You gotta relax. The one I saw. Not something like the one I saw. Now, one bonus technique here. Okay, let's bring both of these up. So we have see that, we have the one I saw. If you have trouble, we start low, we start slow, we start trying to build up the sounds, getting in and out of for a reason. Even this can be too much. Even this can be too much when you're starting. One little trick you can use as you start putting sounds together. Remember earlier we talked about putting between everything? You can actually do that between words. So let's say we start an make sure that it's good, it's open, your sides of it, the sides of your tongue are relaxed as well. Nice, good quality. Sounds good, clear, okay. You're gonna say, go into C. You can do it as a transition or you can do it separate. C, or C. And again, go slow, okay? Don't rush through it, don't just say C, right? Still pay attention. And you put an between that. C, that. Okay. And you'll notice sometimes after you say a word, when you try to do again, now you're like or something got off track, and you're going to notice probably the back of the tongue raised or you tightened here. This gives you a chance to reset between each word. And then if you get stuck on a word and you're like, oh, I can't get that to work, you can zoom in to a particular sound like the fix it, and then put it back together with the th to the and then the to the t, and then the th to the to the t. So you zoom in. That's what I mean by zoom in, and then you zoom back out, put it back together. Right? This example here is a little longer. The one I saw. This will start to help you be able to hold the relaxedness, hold the settings through your speech. Okay, you can look at this as sort of a half step or a more intensive exercise than just doing the phrase without the uhs in between. And it's a very useful, powerful tool if you go slow and if you put in the work. Rushing will only cause you problems. Also, record yourself and or get feedback from a native speaker. You need to have some sort of feedback to be able to hear yourself better, or have somebody sort of say, oh, I hear some problem somewhere that you might not even notice. This is also where you want to start bringing in a little bit of shadowing. You can take the single words from my extra practice lessons that I made before for each sound. Say there's the word C. Okay, so you're working maybe on the S, maybe you're working on the E. Either way, you have a record of me saying a particular word that you can then try to repeat, record yourself doing it, compare how I sound to how you sound. That's the process. If you take a phrase or a sentence that maybe you get from a podcast or a TV show, or some sentences that I've put in some of my lessons, whatever it is, then you can take those, slow them down, go slow. Okay, don't rush through them, and focus on that relaxed quality. Even if the sounds aren't perfect, we got to get that relaxed quality underneath. You can always sign up for lessons with me directly on italki using the link in the description. Next up is Phase 2A Part 2, which is all about R, L, and then combining R and L with vowels. That's the next level up. Don't rush into it, but I'll see you guys when you get there.